Evening, I'm Spot On Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler, and welcome to the Spot On Weather. The name of this one is called Block Over the Top. Spot On Weather Block Over the Top video, and I'll let you know exactly what that expression means, block over the top. This is the 21st of November 2022, and I first want to say things, basically say to everybody, Happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you. I hope you have a wonderful holiday coming up this Thursday. You can see we have some of the traditional symbols of fall here with the Happy Thanksgiving message. So again, I really wish the best to you and your family as well as your friends, those that are watching from home this evening. Again, Happy Thanksgiving a little bit early. All right, so speaking of Thanksgiving, let's take a look at what we're expecting as far as the upper air pattern on Thanksgiving Day itself. I'm showing you two of the ensemble models. The first one here on the left is the GEFS ensemble forecasting system, and then the one on the right is going to be the European ensemble prediction system, the EPS. What we're looking at for Thanksgiving across the mid-Atlantic and the eastern U.S. is generally some weak ridging. Whether we're looking at the GEFS over here on the left or the EPS on the right, we do see a signature of some weaker ridging extending from the mid-Atlantic northward into southeastern Canada on Thanksgiving Day. And then we see this trough, see the blue coloring here, that indicates below normal heights associated with a trough. A trough is an area which is typically associated with cooler temperatures as well as some form of unsettled weather, some sort of precipitation typically with troughs. Looking at this ridge configuration for Thanksgiving Day, whether we're looking at the GEFS or the European, we notice that we do have a ridge that is going to be in place for Thanksgiving Day across the Pacific Northwest upward into Western Canada. Doesn't matter which one of these ensemble models we look at. The one major difference you do notice is this is the European EPS here on the right. You'll notice there's a troughing configuration. These black solid lines are the height contours. And you notice you have a troughing configuration extending from Nebraska down to Kansas, Oklahoma, and the Texas Panhandle. Whereas on the right over here, the GEFS is much stronger. It's stronger than the European, and as well as the placement is different. So you see where the GFS ensemble forecasting system has a closed upper level low at 500 millibars or 18,000 feet above the ground. It's over parts of New Mexico, whereas the European EPS here on the right doesn't have that closed low, and the trough axis is further to the northeast, by the way, too. So we got a stronger, more amplified digging trough on the GFS ensemble here on the left with a closed upper level low, and on the European over here on the right, we have a general open trough configuration. So overall, we're looking at a milder Thanksgiving Day across the eastern U.S., the mid-Atlantic included. Right on up towards New England, looking dry as well. Let's look at the precipitation forecast for Thanksgiving Day. Generally here on the left, really both of these are showing the European deterministic model. The green coloring indicate where precipitation is expected to occur for Thanksgiving Day. You'll notice there's some showers and potentially some thunderstorms extending from eastern Texas up into parts of eastern Kansas, Arkansas, northern Louisiana. This would be on Thanksgiving morning. This would be on Thanksgiving morning here on the left. Notice it's dry from the Mid-Atlantic up to New England for your Thanksgiving Day plans, including the Macy's Day Thanksgiving Day Parade up there in New York City. It's looking dry. Look over here on the right. We're showing you the European deterministic forecast for this would be Thanksgiving evening. Now we're getting to after sunset on Thanksgiving night. Showing a closed low over the Texas Panhandle on the European model. You see these dashed lines here, these blue dashed lines indicating cooler air aloft. With this particular feature, not ahead of that trough, we have some rising heights downstream of it. And we also have in that warm sector of this developing cyclone, we do see some showers and thunderstorms stretching from northern Louisiana up to North Mississippi, as well as parts of Arkansas and the Memphis, Tennessee area. So it could be a wet in this general zone, East Texas on up to southern Missouri, western Tennessee, Arkansas down to Mississippi. New Orleans included in that for Thanksgiving night. Generally dry across the western United States, and then we also see dry conditions on Thanksgiving night from the mid-Atlantic northward to New England. Looking at the temperature anomaly forecast for Thanksgiving Day, showing the morning here on the left and evening temperature anomalies in degrees Fahrenheit over here on the right is Thanksgiving evening, generally showing above normal temperatures across parts of Texas, extending northeastward to the Midwest, as well as along the Gulf Coast, right on into the Florida Peninsula. For this is Thanksgiving morning here on the left again. Show 10 to 15 degree above normal anomalies along Interstate 10 from Jacksonville right on down through Pensacola area, Biloxi, Mobile, stretching westward along Interstate 10 to Louisiana. We also see some warmer than normal conditions extending from around the Topeka, Kansas area, working northeastward towards eastern Iowa. Cooler than normal temperatures are going to be existing from the mid-Atlantic northward, specifically up into northern portions of New England. More significant departures from normal on the cool side for Thanksgiving morning. By the evening over here on the right, we're seeing some of that below normal temperature anomalies, those cooler than normal anomalies extending across Maine right on down to parts of New England. Some slightly cooler than normal conditions across the mid-Atlantic. And then we see warmer than normal temperatures again along Interstate 10, the Gulf Coast states, as well as over parts of the Midwest for Thanksgiving evening. A much wider area of cooler than normal temperatures will be existing over Texas, the Panhandle area, as well as Oklahoma, into parts in New Mexico and Arizona, as well as Utah and Colorado, in association with that upper level low and the unsettled conditions of that trough. Now let's take a look at the 300 millibar wind speed forecast. Let's go beyond Thanksgiving Day now, from 25 to 29 November 2022. The upper left-hand graphic is the 300 millibar wind speed forecast in knots, showing a ridge-like configuration across parts of the northern plain states. We see a major jet streak extending from western Canada right on through the portions of central Canada. And then we also see a lot of wind energy at 300 millibars wrapping around this closed low feature over the Texas Panhandle. We see a finger of stronger wind speeds at 300 millibars to the west of this particular feature, as well as a area of stronger wind speeds to the east of this feature across eastern Texas. And then there's one other jet streak. This is on Friday afternoon, the 25th of November. You see some very strong winds extending west to east from southern Ohio over parts of Pennsylvania and just south basically of Long Island. Looking at the forecast here in the top center, this would be the 300 millibar wind speed forecast for Saturday, the 26th of November, showing that upper level low slowly moving towards the northeast. It's now located over parts of northeastern Oklahoma. By Saturday, the 26th of November, Saturday afternoon, we do see a strong finger of a jet stream. We do see a jet max extending from the south across parts of Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi. And when we also see another main area of the jet stream well north of the U.S.-Canadian border, you see some stronger wind speeds over parts of southeastern Canada, southern Hudson Bay, and also some stronger wind speeds at 300 millibars from the northwest right off over the western North Atlantic. Looking at the forecast in the upper right, this is for Sunday, the 27th of November, 2022, in the afternoon hours. We see a new area of stronger wind speeds at 300 millibars moving into Oregon, as well as some stronger wind speeds across parts of Arizona and New Mexico. And then there's another area here in the mid-Atlantic by Sunday afternoon. We see that we do have some cyclonic circulation, generally associated with a low over parts of southeastern Canada, right around the Toronto, Canada area actually. And we do see some stronger wind speeds on the front side of that cyclonic circulation across parts of southeastern Virginia, working its way northward. Southerly winds at 300 millibars up to New Hampshire, Vermont, as well as Massachusetts and Connecticut. Forecast of 300 millibar wind speeds here on the bottom left. This would be for Monday, next Monday, the 28th of November, 2022. Generally showing some stronger wind speeds moving in on the backside of this long wave trough. Stronger wind speeds across portions of Oregon, as well as stronger wind speeds associated with a jet streak from Oklahoma extending northeastward to southern Ohio. And then we do see some stronger wind speeds across New Jersey, as well as stronger wind speeds across New England. And then finally, the forecast for 300 millibar wind speeds in knots for the 29th of November, this would be next Tuesday, showing some stronger winds. The general axis of the jet stream is made out rather nicely here. taking a look at this 300 millibar chart with the main jet axis extending from southern Oregon right on down into a long wave trough configuration across the Intermountain West, as well as some stronger wind speeds across Kansas, as well as just offshore of the mid-Atlantic. So generally we're looking at some troughing, long wave troughing next Tuesday across the Intermountain West, a little bit of long wave ridging extending northward from the Gulf of Mexico right up to the Ohio River area. Looking at the thickness chart forecast, specifically 25 to 29 November 2022, showing you generally where we're looking at for precipitation. We're looking at the green areas denoting precipitation, not necessarily delineating on these charts between rain and snow, liquid versus solid form, but we are showing where the conditions are rather unsettled. So we're going to start it off here in the upper left. We see that closed low situated over the Texas Panhandle for Friday afternoon, the 25th of November. And we see a lot of unsettled weather across parts of Oklahoma, East Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. And we also see some unsettled weather for Friday afternoon across parts of South Carolina, extending offshore, as well as in the parts of western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. The rest of the country looks pretty good if you're out and about shopping from, say, the Chicago area to northwestward to Minneapolis, Bismarck, Pierre, all the way back towards Casper, Wyoming, as well as Boise, Idaho looking dry for your shopping, as well as California looking really good as well. The forecast here in the center, top center, this is for Saturday, the 26th of November, 2022, showing that upper level low now positioned just to the northeast of Texarkana, and we see a lot of unsettled conditions extending to the north of that closed low across parts of eastern Kansas for Saturday afternoon, the 26th of November, as well as across parts of Missouri, some heavy rain occurring in parts of southern Illinois, and then right on down through parts of Alabama and Georgia, Tennessee, and Kentucky. That looks like the wet areas for this Saturday. Pretty dry across the northern tier of the U.S. as well as the West Coast, and as well as parts of basically the whole part of New England there. The forecast on the upper right here showing the precipitation outlook for Sunday, this upcoming Sunday, the 27th of November, showing that closed low now pivoting and working its way towards Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We got a lot of heavier precip offshore in the mid-Atlantic, and we do see some of those shower activity extending northward into New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, as well as Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, as well as the New York City area for Sunday afternoon. Looking at the forecast here on the bottom left for Monday, the 28th of November, we see the emergence of a trough as the orientation of these dashed lines indicate. We do see some scattered showers, potential snow showers in the higher elevations by next Monday, the 28th of November, across parts of Utah as well as Wyoming into parts of western Montana and Idaho. But fairly dry across much of the United States by next Monday, the 28th of November. Cooler and unsettled out in the Pacific Northwest, and then dry and rather seasonable, generally from Interstate 70, working our way southward, generally seasonable, a very flat-looking packing of these thickness lines, indicating a more west-east jet stream at this point across much of the eastern U.S. And then the forecast here on the bottom right for next Tuesday, the 29th of November, 2022, showing another system moving on into the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, Portland looking wet, as well as portions of western Washington state. We do see a cooler pattern settling in, a little bit of a trough configuration across anywhere from the Dakotas working our way westward to Washington, Oregon state, as well as Nevada, Utah, Colorado. We do see a little bit of ridging that's occurring by the orientation of these thickness lines. We do see a 995 millibar low pressure system right there in that baroclinic zone where you have the tightest packing of the thickness lines, indicating the greatest changes in the thermal profile or the temperature profile. We do see some unsettled weather, some showers across parts of Tennessee by next Tuesday, the 18th of November, but fairly dry along the Interstate 95 corridor. Looking at the forecast high temperatures now between 25 and 29 November 2022. Up here on the upper left is the maximum or the high temperature forecast for the 25th of November. Generally, this Friday, things are looking the warmest, generally south of Interstate 20, right on down to the Gulf Coast, as well as the Florida Peninsula. So if you've got vacation plans to go to Orlando, it's looking very warm. High temperatures around 80 degrees this Friday. And generally cooler conditions across, areas we'd expect to see cool this time of year in November. 30s and 40s scattered about. generally from the Pennsylvania area along Interstate 80 working west towards Iowa as well as Omaha. And the coldest temperatures are going to be up in the Intermountain West region. Forecast for high temperatures here in the top center for Saturday, the 26th of November, generally showing the warmest air from Memphis south to the Gulf Coast to New Orleans, as well as Biloxi and Mobile, working our way over to Tallahassee and Jacksonville, southward to the Orlando area and Tampa, St. Pete, as well as Miami, looking warmer, the warmest part of the country. And the coldest air remains up over parts of Montana and Idaho, as well as Washington State, and working our way towards Wyoming. Forecast for high temperatures, upper right here for Sunday, the 27th of November, showing, just by looking at this, we do see a little bit of milder air working its way up the East Coast, indicating some sort of southerly wind flow based on this warmer air advection that's occurring from the Carolinas up to eastern Virginia, as well as Delaware and New Jersey. Coldest temperatures along the northern plain states as well as the Pacific Northwest by this Sunday. Forecast here on the bottom left is the high temperatures for Monday, the 28th of November, showing the mildest temperatures occurring generally from the Interstate 64 area southward. You're going to see some high temperatures in the middle to upper 70s across the Gulf Coast by Monday, the 28th of November. And then finally, in the bottom right, we're showing you the forecast high temperatures for Tuesday afternoon, the 29th of November, 2022. This aqua color up here in Western Canada is bitterly cold air that's sitting up there, kind of reloading at the present time. And you do see some much colder air as well, pouring south into parts of Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, and even the higher elevations of Nevada and eastern Oregon. This is where your coldest temperatures are going to exist associated with that trough along the western U.S. We do see a little bit of a ridge signature here across the Midwest, the Mid-South, all the way to the East Coast. And then the coolest temperatures are going to be north of that across parts of the upper Midwest to New England. Forecast low temperatures now for 25 to 29 November. Here's the 25th. And just wanted to briefly go over this with you. Mildest overnight lows going to be in the same location where we saw those mildest afternoon high temperatures, generally along the Gulf Coast, New Orleans eastward to Jacksonville, working our way southward, whether we're talking Interstate 95, whether we're talking Interstate 4 or Interstate 75. It's going to be a mild ride for you on Friday morning, the 25th of November. Coldest low temperatures overnight across upper Midwest, northern plains, as well as the Intermountain West. Looking at the forecast for low temperatures for Saturday morning, the 26th of November, looking quite mild from Alabama, southern Georgia, Florida Panhandle, really the whole peninsula of Florida once again. Coolest temperatures are going to be generally north of the Interstate 64 area, specifically Interstate 80, and then Interstate 90 and 94 look pretty cold for Saturday morning. Forecast lows here in the upper right for Sunday morning, the 27th of November, showing a little bit of warm air advection kind of sneaking up the coast into the eastern Carolinas and southeastern Virginia by Sunday morning. That again is indicative of some sort of wind coming from a southerly direction with that warm air advection. Looking at the forecast here in the bottom left for Monday morning, the 28th of November, now we see a little bit of a change. We saw those warmer temperatures, the warm air advection moving up the east coast there along the coastal areas. Now we see that's replaced by this blue coloring, which indicates low temperatures back down into the 40s overnight for a large swath of the southeastern U.S., with the mildest air now for next Monday morning moving back towards Louisiana and eastern Texas. The coldest air is going to be generally north of Interstate 80, and specifically over the Intermountain West, the higher elevation areas. And then finally, the forecast low temperatures here in the lower right for next Tuesday morning, the 29th of November, showing milder than normal temperatures across East Texas, working our way up to Louisiana, Mississippi, Arkansas, southern Arkansas specifically. And we see cooler than normal temperatures across the western U.S. by next Tuesday morning. Here are the forecast temperature anomalies between 25 and 29 November 2022. Upper left here showing the forecast high temperature anomalies for the 25th of November, this Friday. Below normal temperatures associated with increased cloudiness and some of the precipitation across the Lone Star State up to Oklahoma. And then we do see above normal temperatures starting to pop up here across parts of the Mid-South, the Memphis area, working our way northward to Indianapolis, Columbus, Ohio. Much above normal temperatures across Montana for this Friday. We're seeing temperature anomalies on the order of 15 to 17 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. Looking at the forecast here in the top center for forecast temp anomalies for high temperatures for Saturday, the 26th of November. And now you're starting to see more of this warmer air moving closer to the East Coast. We do have that little pocket of cooler than normal temperatures on the order of 8 to 12 degrees Fahrenheit below normal across Kansas and Oklahoma, as well as North Texas, right on down to the Houston area. This is association, again, with increased cloudiness and some showery precipitation. Forecast here on the upper right is the temperature anomalies in degrees Fahrenheit, what those departures from normal look like for the 27th of November, this Sunday. And generally we're seeing, a lot of orange coloring now from Maine all the way down to Florida along the East Coast, as well as over parts of West Texas. We're seeing a warming trend to the temperatures as that system moves off to the northeast and away from the area. Forecast here in the bottom left showing the temperature anomalies in degrees Fahrenheit for next Monday, the 28th of November, showing an area of warmer air extending from Houston, working its way all the way up to Springfield, Illinois, as well as Indianapolis, as well as parts of eastern Kentucky, parts of Alabama, Mississippi. You see the brighter orange coloring indicating temperature anomalies in the order of 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. So we do see a warming trend in your future for these cities here, Little Rock included. Cooler than normal temperatures occur from western Canada right on down Interstate 5, parts of Washington State and Oregon. You see this green and blue coloring indicating below normal temperatures across the Pacific Northwest by next Monday, the 28th of November. And then finally, on the bottom right here, showing the temperature anomalies, and it's quite a division, isn't it? See how fine this division line is between the Dakotas and parts eastward and southeastward. Kansas alone, you're going from 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit above normal readings in southeastern Kansas to 5 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit below normal temperature anomalies in northwest Kansas. So that tells me that we have some sort of frontal system that's existing, stretching from eastern Nebraska down to central Kansas by this point in time, as well as extending northward into the eastern Dakotas. So much below normal across parts of Montana, Wyoming, and western Dakotas by next Tuesday, the 29th of November, and then much above normal, 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit above normal from Texas northward to East Kansas, working our way eastward to the eastern seaboard, including Atlanta, Georgia, Montgomery, Alabama, Jackson, Mississippi. All right, so now let's take a look at the longer range ensemble models now. I went into 3, 4, and 5 December. Here's the 3rd of December. On the left, we're going to show you the GFS ensemble, and on the right is a European ensemble. Anytime you see the orange coloring that indicates above normal heights, this maroon and brown coloring is extremely above normal heights. And anytime you see this blue shading, that indicates below normal heights. So what are we looking at here for 3 December? This would be coming on to Saturday, the first weekend of December. We're looking at a ridge that's building its way, an anomalous ridge building its way up towards the Aleutians. Downstream of that ridge, we do see some troughing across the upper plains and upper Midwest. And we do see a little bit of higher heights across the Gulf Coast. The forecast here, if we compare the two, the European here on the right, compare that GFS ensemble, very similar. We do see some higher than normal heights across the Aleutian Island area of Alaska, and we do see below normal heights. This is a big difference here. Look at the Pacific Northwest. We have blue shading on the European ensemble, and then on the GEFS we have orange shading. So a little bit different in the placements of the synoptic features, specifically the trough in this case, with the European EPS showing that troughing over the Pacific Northwest on Saturday, the 3rd of December. We do see an anticyclone, a huge upper level high over the Caribbean, and we do see higher than normal heights across the south central U.S., Midwest, right onto the East Coast by Saturday, the 3rd of December. What about the 4th of December? We do still see the higher than normal heights there across parts of the Aleutian Island chain of Alaska. We also see higher than normal heights now across the western U.S. according to the GEFS model. And then look at how blue this is. This is really looking interesting, this part. It almost looks like we have cross-polar flow trying to reestablish itself by the 3rd of December, or rather the 4th of December, from far northern areas of Canada working its way southward to the Mid-Atlantic and New England. So we're going to have to watch this one closely. You notice here on the North Atlantic side too, the ensembles are hitting at a negative North Atlantic oscillation pattern where we're getting ridging now into the North Atlantic. So we have to watch that. We have to see what happens there. This is a signature of that negative EPO again as well, Eastern Pacific Oscillation. Looking at the forecast here, the European ensemble, very similar, but look where the ridge, the highest heights are this lighter brown shading. So we have a stronger ridge, or much more stronger indicator of higher than normal heights on the European as compared to the GFS ensemble for the 4th of December. And we do see troughing downstream of that ridge across parts of the Pacific Northwest. And then we also see higher than normal heights for a large chunk of the south central and eastern U.S. Looking at 5 December ensemble forecast on the left here, showing the GFS ensemble. And again, look at this. This is really looking like a cold signature from central Canada right on down into parts of the East Coast by the 5th of December. And what it really makes me wonder about this, really gets my attention, is this above normal heights there south of the Aleutian Islands and above normal heights across the North Atlantic. So negative NAO, negative EPO, okay? And then we got this weakened polar vortex as well, the stratospheric polar vortex weak. And so you get, again, the potential for cross-polar flow to reestablish itself across the eastern U.S. Here is the European EPS forecast, again showing a stronger ridge, higher than normal heights compared to the GFS ensemble. We see troughing downstream of the higher than normal heights across the Pacific Northwest by the 5th of December. And we also see higher than normal heights with some sort of ridge existing across the deep south from Texas to the Gulf Coast, Louisiana, Arkansas. And then we see this little pool of lower than normal heights and potentially cooler than normal temperatures down the East Coast. And then there's that indication there again, that upper level ridging, that orange coloring, the darker orange coloring across the North Atlantic. So we could have a ridge in the Pacific, we could have a ridge, the forecast is showing a ridge across the North Atlantic. And in between that, with an elongated, stretched out stratospheric polar vortex, we can see cross-polar flow reestablish itself. Here are the latest teleconnections forecasts. I'm going to show you the EPS, the European Ensemble Prediction System, as well as the GEFS, the GFS Ensemble Forecasting System. And let's take a look at 4 major teleconnections. The Arctic Oscillation is the AO, the NAO North Atlantic Oscillation, the EPO is the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, and the PNA the Pacific North American Pattern. Starting off with the Arctic Oscillation here, we're looking at the European. By the way, I'm looking at ensembles here on both the EPS as well as the GEFS. I'm not looking at deterministics, I'm looking at ensembles here just to kind of compare. So European EPS, 50 perturbed members. What does it show? The average mean line here, that green line, is showing a turn to a negative AO, okay? Specifically as we head towards the last week of November here into early December. And then the North Atlantic Oscillation, the NAO forecast by the European EPS, is also showing a similar result. Going negative with the NAO of 27th of November all the way to the 6th of December. The European EPS EPO forecast, 50 perturbed members over here in the bottom left. And this is real interesting. Look at the green line here, average mean line, showing a negative tendency for the EPO. And it drops down pretty good here around the 3rd of December to negative. And then finally, the forecast, European EPS PNA forecast. Now, this one's showing a negative PNA. So we have a negative EPO, we have a negative PNA, we have a negative NAO, and a negative AO. So everything is pretty much negative of all these teleconnections per the latest European Ensemble Prediction System. Now let's go to the GEFS. AO forecast, negative. Okay, right on through early December. The North Atlantic Oscillation forecast going negative around the 28th to the 29th of November, staying negative to the 7th of December. The GEFS EPO forecast going negative after the 27th of November, coming up slightly and then dropping back further negative around the 2nd to 3rd of December. And then finally, that Pacific North American forecast, the GEFS V12, showing a tendency for a pretty sharply negative Pacific North American pattern. Okay, so real interesting. We look at the GEFS, we have a negative PNA pattern, we've got a negative NAO, we have a negative AO, and then we have a negative EPO, right? So bottom line here, it's looking really interesting here, but just looking at these, of what's to come. And I'll show you some more here in a minute. Now, the GFS Euro and the GEFS Stratospheric Polar Vortex forecast. Let's take a look at that now. This is based off the 12Z model run from Monday the 21st of November. All right, so first GFS up here in the upper left. The white lines indicate the height contours, and you can kind of notice that almost like that elongated or stretched out look of the polar vortex. By the way, this forecast is for the 4th of December. Bottom line here is GFS continues to hint at a weaker than normal polar vortex in the stratosphere. More stretched out look. Upper right here shows European forecast for the polar vortex. This one goes out 240 hours. So this one goes out, the latest I can run here was 1 December, but very similar to the GFS in the fact we have a stretched out, more elongated polar vortex extending from the Siberian side of the continent right on down into the the Arctic Ocean, right on down to Greenland, into parts of northeastern Canada. Then finally, this is the GFS Ensemble forecasting system, the polar vortex forecast. Now these are mean temperature anomalies in degrees Celsius. So when we talk about stratospheric warmings, I'm looking for the orange coloring. If I want colder than normal temperatures, I want to look for these green colorings. And it's really hard to see the isotherms, the lines of equal temperature here, but it's still an elongated type of system according to the GEFS model. This is for 4 December. Although I will say that the GEFS, the GFS Ensemble, does show a more tightly consolidated and symmetrical polar vortex in the stratosphere, which would potentially be indicative of a strengthening polar vortex as we get to early December. That's the GEFS model. GFS operational, European operational, both showing that elongated look to the polar vortex right on into December. Now for the MJO forecast, I'm showing you the GFS Ensemble forecast over here on the left. The green line indicating the average of all the members. Those yellow lines represent all the different members of the model run of the Ensemble GFS model run. Generally showing the MJO currently in phase 6, and then working its way with greater amplitude or magnitude into phase 7, and then basically rotating back around to the null phase by the 5th of December 2022. Now you will notice there are some outliers here. These yellow lines, the other members of the Ensemble model run from, I think this was 12Z today, the model run, showing there is potential for this thing to get stronger in phase 7. The MJO could be potentially into phase 8 and maybe ride the edge there of the null in the phase 1 phase. So this is interesting to watch. We'll have to continue to watch the trends on this. And the middle forecast here, the graphic shows the aqua line. That the aqua coloring indicates the GFS operational forecast, showing very similar to the GEFS, showing a phase 6, phase 7 MJO phase, and then weekly goes into phase 8 very briefly before going to the null phase by 5 December. And then finally, here's the CFS MJO forecast, and look at this twisting pattern right here in the smaller inner circle. So basically, the CFS is way different than these two, the GEFS and GFS. You really don't see it going out into phases 6 and 7, do you, here with the CFS? And then you also see it going by the 16th of December and 21st of December, going out into phases 8 and 1 and gaining some magnitude or amplitude. So here are my final thoughts on tonight's video. We're looking at a milder period for the eastern United States into late November, including the Thanksgiving Day holiday. It's looking really good. If you got plans to be outdoors, let's go back here. So for Thanksgiving Day, here's the precipitation forecast again. If you got plans to go outdoors, there might be a few showers across Pennsylvania into parts of southern New York State, some scattered showers. But overall, it's looking really good. Oh, wow, I was on the wrong chart. Sorry about that. So bottom line is, here's Thanksgiving Day. I didn't go back far enough. But as you can see, it's looking pretty good across much of the United States Thanksgiving Day, with the exception of the Deep South. Arkansas, Tennessee by evening, Mississippi, some heavier rain there along the Gulf Coast. But outside of this area, the United States looks really good on Thanksgiving Day for traveling. If you got travel plans or outdoor activities with family and friends, looking good. Additionally, the models are coming into better agreement as far as rain chances and the timing. Most importantly, the timing this weekend of precipitation. If you're out and about this holiday weekend on either Saturday the 26th or Sunday the 27th of November, The models are getting into a better agreement. Now, there was a lot of disagreement. They haven't been doing a very good job syncing up and locking into a particular solution as far as timing of rain really has been the big issue, as well as phasing of some of the energy. What's once looked like a fairly significant East Coast storm may now only be a situation where you get, scattered showers, more scattered in nature than widespread, stratiform type rain. But we'll have to keep an eye on this. There's still time for the subject for this to change, okay? Interesting look for early December, as some models are hinting at a weak, elongated stratospheric polar vortex, plus a negative Arctic oscillation, a negative North Atlantic oscillation, and a negative Eastern Pacific oscillation. But I will say, with caution, we do see a positive PNA. Rather, that should be a negative PNA. I don't think I did that one right. No. Yeah, so this should actually be negative PNA. So with a negative PNA, this, that kind of works against all these other features, right? An elongated, weaker stratospheric polar vortex that's stretched out, as well as a negative AO, negative NAO, negative EPO would all result in colder than normal temperatures across the eastern U.S. But this should be negative PNA here. And so a negative PNA, on the other hand, would indicate milder than normal temperatures across the east, okay? And you'd have more of that cooler, unsettled weather across the western U.S. and the ridging and the milder and drier weather across the east with a negative PNA. So this PNA, looking at the teleconnections forecast, would act to offset or destructively interfere with these other teleconnections, all right, as far as the temperature regime in the eastern U.S. The MJO forecast, they vary from phases 6, 7 to the null phase. We're looking at the GEFS and GFS model runs today. To potentially phases 8 and 1 for the climate forecast system, the CFS. If the CFS were to verify, this would be a much colder look in early December for the eastern U.S. But we'll have to wait to see what these trends are and how they change over time. And then the block over the top. So I titled this video tonight, Block Over the Top. And the reason I did is, if you look at this forecast for the longer range in early December here, one thing you notice here, you have blocking up into the western Bering Sea. You have blocking across the North Atlantic Ocean. On the 4th of December, this gets stronger, definitely stronger on the EPS European. Blocking up into the Bering Sea, western portions of Alaska on the Pacific side, and this ridge is building across parts of the North Atlantic. So block, and then on the 5th of December, a block on the Pacific side again, a block on the Atlantic side again, indicating the negative NAO, a block and a block. And so when I say block over the top, that would indicate that, if these higher heights were to extend all the way up over the North Pole, over this location here, if we get a ridge bridge where these two merge over the top, that would direct colder air down to the middle latitudes across the U.S. for early December. And that's really what I'm watching for, the block over the top, where you get the higher pressures or the higher heights and the warmer temperatures up in the higher latitudes, and then you get a pressure pattern directing colder air to the middle latitudes, the U.S. And so that's what I'm really interested in when I say block over the top in tonight's title of the video. That could definitely lead to colder temperatures across the eastern U.S. in early December. And it's starting to gain more traction per the Ensemble model runs the last couple days for early December. I'm noticing this trend is really picking up here, where you're getting the ridging on the North Atlantic side, the ridging on the northern Pacific side. And again, I like the look at this. I like the look at this as far as colder pattern again setting up by the 4th or 5th of December. Again, subject to change. We're looking 300 hours out into the future here. So a lot could change between now and then, but I just wanted to make mention of that in tonight's video. All right, that wraps the video up this evening. Again, best wishes for a happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you. Thank you for subscribing to this channel, the Spot on Weather YouTube channel. I know I kind of threw out a lot of information tonight at you, and hopefully, you learn something every time that I cover these videos. You really learn from it. Okay, that wraps it up, everybody. And until next time, Happy Thanksgiving. Take care, and God bless everyone.